Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the June 8th, 2023 meeting of the Hammond Board of Public Works and Safety. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lott. Ms. Greenbaum.
Here.
Mr. Kalina.
Here.
Are there any conflict of interest statements? Approval of the minutes from the meeting of May 25th, 2023. We can approve those.
Well, I'll make a recommendation for approval.
I concur. Bid openings, there are none. Matters from other department heads or their representatives? None. Number 7, correspondence. Letter A, correspondence received from Dean Button Capital Improvements Board requesting $78,497.99 of CIB funding to be allocated for the J.F. Mahoney Drive. Change order number 1 submitted for approval.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and the board. Thankfully, Chris Moore is here. He's the engineer on the project, so if there's any questions I can't answer, Chris is here. This is our first change order for J.F. Mahoney Drive. This is a project that was funded mostly through American Rescue Plan Act funds that has been set aside by the council. This particular work relates primarily to poor subgrade that we found on the road. I mean, we sort of thought we'd anticipated a lot of that. You know, the condition of J.F. Mahoney Drive prior to the work was really broken up, and that had a lot to do with the subgrade. Well, it was worse in certain areas than we expected. And so that's the bulk of it. There's also some pipe work that was added because to improve the drainage away from the road. And then there were traffic signal loop detection that needed to be replaced at 174th and Kennedy. And so that's the contents of that. The Capital Improvements Board met on Monday and approved the funding allocation for the change order, and so I'd ask for your approval of both the change order and the funding allocation.
Okay, and I'll note that these have been signed by the mayor and the city controller.
Okay. I'll recommend approval for the change orders.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter B, correspondence received from Dean Button requesting $444,700 of CIB funding to be allocated to the design of the Grand Avenue pedestrian bridge with beam, longest, and neff submitted for approval.
So you have an agreement and a funding allocation for this project for your consideration. The city of Hammond has in principle an agreement with the Norfolk Southern Railroad to have the railroad pay for a new pedestrian bridge over the Norfolk Southern tracks at Grand Avenue. In the meantime, and in an effort to expedite this project, the city is fronting the money for the design work on this project, or the CIB has set aside funding for this in anticipation that we will be reimbursed by Norfolk Southern for this work. We've worked closely with Norfolk Southern on the engineer selection and the scope of work that would also be required through the review of by Norfolk Southern of the design. And we expect that this project will take about a year to design and and then a construction for about a year. So before you have a funding allocation that was approved by the Capital Improvements Board on Monday, and the agreement with beam, longest, and neff for your consideration.
Okay, and I'll note that these were signed by the mayor and the city controller.
I make a recommendation for the approval of the bridge.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter C, correspondence received from Dean Button requesting $50,000 of CIB funding to be allocated for general engineering services with Advanced Engineering Services of Hammond submitted for approval.
Early this year, we opened up a contract with Advanced Engineering Services. We have spent all the budget money that we had extended for this year, and so this is a supplemental budget increase to that agreement with Advanced Engineering Services. So we're just asking for approval of the funding allocation. It was approved by the Capital Improvements Board on Monday.
Okay. And I'll note this was signed by the mayor and the city controller.
I make a recommendation for the approval of the funding.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter D, correspondence received from the City Controller's Office requesting the approvals for the renewal of the amusement device licenses for Spiros County Lounge and Frankie V's Bar and Grill.
I recommend approval of both of those amusement devices for both businesses.
I concur. Letter E, correspondence received from Advanced Engineering Services requesting permission to restrict traffic temporarily on Indianapolis Boulevard between 165th Street and 167th Street in relation to the geotechnical engineering study for proposed roadway improvements on June 19th, 2023, weather permitting.
So this is for a new traffic signal that's being considered or designed between 165th and 167th, the entrance to the existing Hammond Sportsplex and the future YMCA. As you know, this is state right-of-way, Indianapolis Boulevard state right-of-way. So we're asking for your approval, but the engineer will also be getting a permit from NDOT. And so there's time ahead to do that. And so we're asking for your approval of this action to just do lane restrictions.
Is that both north and southbound, sir?
Yeah, they'll close, but they won't be at the same time.
Okay, gotcha.
They'll have one lane or the shoulder closed to do what geotechnical work, drilling that they have to do on one side, and then they'll go to the other side. So it won't be more than one lane closed at any time.
I recommend approval for the engineering services.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter F, correspondence received from Advanced Engineering Services requesting permission to restrict traffic temporarily on Hammond Avenue between Douglas Street and Russell Street in relation to the geotechnical engineering study for the proposed roadway improvements on June 8th, 2023, weather permitting.
This is a local street, a little bit different than the last one. This is a project that we received funding from NERC or NDOT, Federal Highway, to reconstruct Hammond Avenue it's the second phase of the Hammond Avenue reconstruction between Russell and Douglas. And so we're doing engineering borings and corings of the street. And so we'd ask for your approval for a lane restriction, weather permitting.
I have a question regarding this.
Sure.
Is there any reason that it's being submitted the date of the work to be supposed to be performed? And also, that's question one. Question two, do you know if this, I know I've driven down Hammond now since the complete closure, and it is challenging to, just with the traffic and stuff. And so was that taken into consideration when this was presented? Just because I was wondering, like, could they have done it at, late at night or early in the morning or not around the rush hour, just because it's pretty tough getting through the detour with the traffic, like down Clinton or down Ogden or down Russell, maybe it's Russell.
Russell's open.
Yeah, Russell's open to get to state line, and this just seems like it's compounding the fact that we've got that detour going, so.
I agree. I can certainly talk to the engineer. It was submitted earlier this week, but obviously today is when the board meets, and so I'll have to check with the engineer.
Yeah, I just hate to, like, it seems like if the board was like, no, and then they may already be out there working for all I know.
I'll have to check.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'll have to follow up on that. As for,
So one day.
yeah, it's just one day, and the engineer Advanced is working side by side with American Structure Point, who's the design engineer of Phase 2, and also the construction engineer representative on site who's managing Phase 1 now. And so they're coordinating all together to make sure there's no interference with the existing closures.
Yeah, these are all good companies, and I know that maybe as you're communicating with engineering companies, these type of companies, that like the board's looking to have these requests more in advance so we can.
Understood,
I know
yep.
you know that, so
Yeah,
just wanted to-
and it's a lane restriction, not a full
Agreed,
closure.
but, yeah, given the detour stuff.
Understood.
Thank you. Given that, no objection to the detour request.
Okay.
I'll make a recommendation for the approval.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter G, correspondence received from Elizabeth Silva requesting permission to hold a block party and closing the west side of the 4400 block of Baltimore Avenue on July 4th, 2023.
Yeah, I'll make a recommendation for approval.
I concur. Number 8, matters from board members. Anything? Number 9, new business. Letter A, proposed agreement of services for HR consulting services from New Focus HR submitted for approval.
Good morning to the board, Madam President. This is a request from the Law Department and the Personnel Department regarding a proposal to revamp the employment manual, job descriptions, and things of that matter. So I would request its approval as presented.
I recommend approval for the HR.
I concur. Letter B, funding allocation requested to receive from the 6th District Councilman Scott Rakos requesting $40,000 of gaming funding to be allocated to the Park Department for the Festival of Lakes and $20,000 for tree removal services. I have the sheet signed by the councilman and the city controller on both.
I recommend we approve Councilman Rinkos' request.
I concur. Letter C, funding allocation request from the 3rd District Councilman Barry Tyler requesting $50,000 of gaming funding to be allocated to the Park Department for resurfacing of Rhodey Avenue from Becker to Lyons.
So for the record, this is a request that was made through the councilman to fund the resurfacing work, which didn't go through the Parks Department, just to be clear. The Capital Improvements Board set aside about $1 million to do resurfacing across the city. Councilman Tyler approached the Capital Improvements Board knowing that Rhodey was in excess of the funding that was available to the district by about $100,000. And so he asked the Capital Improvements Board if it would be okay if they split the overage. And the Capital Improvements Board agreed to Councilman Tyler's request. So the $50,000 has previously been approved by the Capital Improvements Board and then through this board. This is Councilman Tyler's match of that extra fund to redo the segment between Lyons and Becker. We'd ask for your approval.
Okay, and I'll note that it has been signed by the city controller and the mayor.
Okay. I recommend approval for Councilman Tyler's request.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter D, bid recommendation for the demolition of properties located at 5627 Calumet Avenue, 6530 Carolina Avenue, 228 Condit Street, 4143 Holman Avenue, 1246 Indiana Street, 1463 Indianapolis Boulevard, 7147 Kennedy, 6624 Missouri, 7352 Nebraska Drive, 2831 Orchard Drive, 941 Reese Avenue, 1430 Stanton Avenue, and 30 Warren Street.
Good morning again to the board. In speaking with, so just to set the record, last week bids were opened. There was a request by all 3 bidders to be able to take a look at their bids and review them based upon some late coming asbestos reports, which are usually an important component of the bids. We allowed that, and I know that Kelly has received information from at least one of the bidders, but we're waiting on information from 2 others, and we're going to give them another week to do that. So if we could just defer this based on Mr. Kearney's request for another week and place this on the agenda, please, Linda, for next week.
Okay. I make a recommendation we defer this to June 15th, 2023.
I concur. Letter E, selection of EV partner submitted for approval.
I'm going to turn this over to Dean. I want to thank Dean for making such a quick review of this. This is on a kind of a quick timetable. The requests for proposals were done last week with a deadline of yesterday, and Dean turned around a recommendation in quick order. So I do want to just point that out and appreciate Dean for doing that. So I'll let Dean address the board.
Thank you, Counselor. This is a letter for you. I'm just going to read it, which sort of demonstrates what Council just mentioned. Hammond Board of Public Works and Safety approved solicitation of proposals for partners for the Hammond Electric Vehicle Charging Station Infrastructure Project on June 1st of 2023. One proposal was received from Francis Energy of Tulsa, Oklahoma last evening. Francis Energy is the 4th largest network of electric vehicle charging station infrastructure in the nation with over 1,000 ports throughout the nation. The engineering department has reviewed the proposal submitted by Francis Energy and recommends the Hammond Board of Public Works and Safety accept and commit to work with Francis Energy as a partner for our submittal to the U.S. Department of Transportation for charging and fueling infrastructure charging and fueling infrastructure discretionary grant program. So I'd ask for your approval of that action.
I make a recommendation we approve the request of UD Partners.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter F, right-of-way permit received from engineering submitted for approval.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
So we have one right-of-way permit. It's for 173rd closure for the Westlake. And today, two representatives of the Westlake Corridor Project are here and can give us an update on the forthcoming closures that are necessary to finish the train. So Dave Robinson and Anthony is here, so I'll let them give a quick update and explain the maintenance of traffic and so forth, how they operate.
Good morning. I'm Dave Robinson. I'm the construction manager for the joint venture, excuse me. We need to close 173rd Street in its entirety from June 19th to the June 23rd. That's a tentative date right now as we're working through some issues with the rail company that's installing the rail, but if there's any update to that, I'll keep you posted. But my intent is to give you whatever time frame that happens, the reasoning for it. And like we will close it on Sunday night, Sunday night, and we'll come in and we'll saw cut the road. We'll remove the pavement that we put in previously under the previous closure, level out the ground. In the interim, we'll have track built up to both sides of it and a panel built on top of the track, as you've seen we've done on the past 5. And we drag that track in, and you can't have any welds within the intersection, so that's why it has to be closed in its entirety. And then we'll come in and we'll surface tamp and regulate it, fill it up with backfill. Thursday, we'll put on the concrete panels for the traffic, the cars to cross over. Friday, we'll pave it and open it up by the end of the day, Friday. Prior to all this, whenever it's finally established, we'll have electronic message boards well in advance, notifying the public that it'll be closed and all the detours that you have on your presentation for availability to all.
Yeah, I think that I was waiting to hear about notice, so I appreciate this gentleman indicating that there will be message boards. I think that's the key now, just because of the sensitivity to road closures for rail, so I appreciate that. And as long as those are up, and of course, making sure we're notifying all departments now, right, and all departments, and police, fire, mayor's office, of any street closures.
We'll also have some handouts for the local businesses to let them know in the general area. And usually we'll go to the immediate neighborhood, knock on doors and let everybody know, and then that circulates, so.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
No,
Thank you very much for the time.
thank you.
Sir.
Letter G,
Do we
oh,
need to approve that?
yeah, I'm sorry, I moved too fast.
That's all right. I'll make a recommendation we approve that request.
I concur.
Thank you.
All right. Letter G, disposal authorizations received from the Hammond Police Department submitted for approval.
Okay. Make a recommendation to approve the request for police.
I concur. Letter H, vacation of right-of-way for 5900 Jackson Avenue submitted for approval.
Morning again. So the engineering department's working closely with the director of city planning. You have a figure attached to the request. This area is a street that's referred to as Jackson that connects Highland to Waltham, just west of the Erie-Lackawanna Bike Trail. So it sort of parallels Soul Avenue, just right over here, where Highland sort of turns, sort of goes to the left. There's a road that comes off of Highland there. It's called Jackson. It was platted as Waltham, but it's since been changed. There is a segment of right-of-way that is adjacent to an existing parcel. There's a request by the property owner to construct a fence, and they're sort of occupying that. We're looking to divest that portion of the property. So we're currently in the process of filing for vacation. We have received responses from all utilities but NIPSCO, so we're waiting on a response from NIPSCO. Vacation would just simply vacate the right-of-way. The easement rights would remain until all the utilities provided a release of easement. So we're expecting NIPSCO also and the other utilities to release their easement rights in that area. The property will be converted over to real property, converted over to the Hammond Redevelopment Commission for disposal, likely to the adjacent property owner, but they have a process that they work through to dispose of property. And so we've worked closely, as I said, with the Director of City Planning to make sure that this is going in accordance with their process, and we'd ask for your approval. This eventually will go through the council, right? Because to vacate the right-of-way is a council ordinance action. At this time, we're asking for board approval for this particular action.
All right, I recommend the approval for the right-of-way permit.
I concur.
Thank you.
Letter I, addendum to 2021-2024 City of Hammond Public Works Department agreement submitted for approval.
This was a result of some negotiations with the administration and the Teamsters, and we would request, it's an addendum to the collective bargaining agreement, and we would request its approval as presented. It has, I believe, been signed by the union.
I recommend approval of the Board of Public Works agreement.
I concur. Letter J, garage sale permits submitted for approval.
I recommend approval of the garage sale permits.
I concur. Number 10, old business. Correspondence received from Dean Button stating engineering has no objections for the placement of a Children at Play sign on the 6800 block of Arkansas Street.
At the June 25th Board of Public Works and Safety meeting, this particular action was referred to engineering. I looked at it. It seems reasonable. I have no objection to installing the signs as requested by the property owner.
May 25th. May 25th.
Beg your pardon, May 25th. It is June, and we haven't got to June 25th.
Right.
My apologies. I'm rushing, Russian.
Get past all the construction. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
I make a recommendation, we approve Mr. Button's request.
I concur.
thank you.
Rental registration hearings. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind everybody that rental registration is due between January 1st and April 15th each year. Once the decision is made today, if you'd like to stay after the meeting to get any paperwork that you need, you're welcome to do so. And also that this is done normally as a one-time courtesy, so if you had one done last year, we won't be extending it again for this year. Okay. So the first letter A, 1176 State Street.
1176 State.
Seeing as no one appears on behalf of 1176 State Street, I would request that the board deny the appeal.
I recommend approval of denying the appeal for 1176 State.
I concur. 6347 Kentucky. You know we had this here too, right? For this Daniel Gonzalez. You saw, okay. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm just here to try and register. I haven't registered it.
Okay, what happened?
Honestly, I didn't question it. I rented it to my sister, well, let it to my sister because she was a single mother, about 5 years. And then I just forgot about it, and I never questioned it or came in.
So 6347 Kentucky, the property has never been registered as a rental before. It looks like Ms. Juarez has been the owner of the property. They're the only owner of record. Now, it's a single-family home, and based on the records from the water department, it would appear that they signed up for service in February of 2019, and there was consistent usage since that point in time. So I would make a recommendation that the board submit this property address to Kevin Smith's office for further review and negotiation, as the years owed and the amount owed would, be more than what we typically have processed through the Board of Public Works and Safety.
And Nick, you said, so this was since 2019?
Yeah,
correct?
since 2019.
Yeah, that's when I let my sister live there. She lived there for about 5 years, and then I rented it.
And then basically, so their home address is the Maryland address,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
I live
So
there.
because there's so many years outstanding that it was not owner occupied, we forward those properties to our legal counsel. And
Okay.
because they're able to negotiate like a better arrangement for the property owners, if the Board of Public Works, they're just able to vote to either approve or deny.
Okay.
So that way we can make sure that, you can provide them all the
Yes.
information you need, okay?
Okay.
If she'd like to stick around after the meeting and come downstairs, I can give her the contact information for Kevin Smith's office, and then I'll prepare the documentation and get sent over.
Is this the young man that was here?
Okay. I recommend that we send this to Smith Searcy.
Will I get a letter?
I concur. Okay, all right. Letter C, 445 Waltham.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
I've owned this property and the next property on the agenda for, I think, 8 or 9 years, and I always pay the taxes on time. I've always paid the rental fee, and I don't know how, but I missed it last year. And then when I went to pay this year, that's when I got the notice back saying I hadn't paid last year. I went through all my records and checkbook, because I sworn I would have mailed it, but I have no evidence. I must have forgot just that 1 year.
Okay.
So 445 Waltham, they've been listed as the owner since February of 2017. It's a single-family home, and we're here for 2022. Did they allow you to register for 23?
No, they returned it
Okay.
back.
It was mailed?
Yes,
All right, so
I have it, yes.
we'd be here for 22 and 23 then, just to include with the findings and decisions. And then next property, 5621 Schultz, it's the same, pretty much same thing. They've been listed as the owner since July of 2017, single-family home, and they missed 2022 for that. Both properties were previously registered on time.
Okay. So we just be charging them the $10 now for last year and this year? Okay.
I would recommend that we waive the late fees for both properties.
I concur.
Thank you, council. Do I need paperwork, or do I go to the clerk's
Yeah,
office?
wait till that, like she said. after-
Oh, okay.
Wait till after, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next one, 3122 Crane Place.
Hello.
Hi. Go ahead, ma'am, I'm sorry.
We actually are a property management company, and we have 93 doors that we register. And I believe that this particular street, we own 3 properties. And I believe that it was just a mix-up that they missed that. We have 3 properties that the numbers are pretty close together. And typically, our registrations are done, so I don't know how that was missed. So I don't have any other reason but to say we missed it.
Okay.
And what property management company are you with?
Olson Property Services. Our name has actually changed, so I don't know if you need to know that.
Oh, is it?
One Property Solution.
Okay, yeah, you probably want to submit new management agreements to make sure that
Okay.
we have the appropriate company listed.
Okay.
As far as Crane Place is concerned, so the individual listed as the owner since December of 2017, and looks like they've Yeah, so we're here for 2022. It's a single-family home, and it looks like it's the first time this property is registered late.
Okay.
The next one, it looks like is also going to be managed and was on the same request. As
So,
that.
so this particular property is, we weren't managing it at that time. And the company that, they do a lot of purchasing properties, so they may do, they may sell it, just purchase it and then resell it. So at the time, they didn't know they were going to make this a rental. So that's why they didn't have any kind of an affidavit or anything done to show what they were doing with that property, because they do several different things. They'll turn around and sell it, or they'll turn around and rehab it and sell it to an owner like turnkey. But at the time of the purchase, they had not had any direction of what they were doing with the property. And it was much later that they decided to make it a rental property, and then that was given to us. So there was no paperwork done for that.
Your reference, is that still Crane Place? Or are you referencing?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you mentioned the 165th.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that your property management company manages that one.
We do now, yes, and I think that's how it came up when we went to register them this year.
All right, so we're going to wait and vote. So we have no problem with 65th either?
Yeah, 165th, there's a new owner listed for 2022.
Yes.
It's a single-family home. Same owner listed for another rental property, but that one was registered, so yeah, we're just there for 2022 on 535 through 37, 165th.
Okay, I'll recommend the waiver of approvals for Crane Place and 165th.
And I concur. Thank you. Letter G, 5111 Soul Avenue.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kofi Estes. I'm the property manager of Hammond Elderly Apartments. I've actually been there the last 15 years. We've never been late. This year, it was just like a slight oversight because both payments for the burglar and fire alarm is due May 31st. And this is the first year the assistant property manager was delegated to take care of the responsibilities. However, she assumed that both the rental registration and the burglar and fire alarm both was due by May 31st, which it was not the case. It was an honest mistake. We apologize, and we plan not to ever be late. I've been there, and it was always my responsibility to make sure that was paid, in which I did. But this was the first year, and however, it got overlooked. When it was brought to my attention, I came up here immediately, tried to pay. However, they said I had to come to court.
Gotcha. Nick.
So this is a 150-unit housing complex with the same owner since 2015. The property has been registered on time since, so we're only here for 2023, and it would be considered a rental unit community for a singular registration charge.
Okay, I recommend that we waive the late fee.
I concur.
I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, that is it. I believe proper etiquette was used today. The meeting is now open to the public.
Mr. Butler.
Sorry, coming back. So there was an action that the board considered, F, item 7F. For the record, this is the request for lane restriction on Holman Avenue. That work will happen tomorrow. I got confirmation. It's not happening today, it's happening tomorrow, weather permitting, weather looks good, so that's the intent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, recommend we motion for adjournment.
I concur.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
And,
you.
you guys want to wait around, we'll